Hope you're all okay and had a great Easter. I just want to go through a few things that I believe need to be spoken about. I think they're very important. It's to do with police and their powers, what they can and cannot, should and shouldn't be doing. As I see it, knowing the law surrounding policing, and this is very important. I'm not going to go through everything, but I just think that these particular issues that I want to bring to your attention, you need to know, you need to understand, and I will put them in the comment section so you can refer to them at any time. Screenshot, print them, do whatever you need to do. The first thing that I want to discuss is, if you do encounter a police officer, which a lot of people are now, ask to see their warrant card. This is genuine. A police officer on duty should always carry their warrant card. Ask to see the warrant card. It should say police constable. That's very important that it says police constable, because a police officer will not be written on that warrant card. It will say police constable. Why is that important? Because when that constable swears their oath, when they are first appointed in the role of constable by any of the police forces, they swear an oath, and that oath is to serve the Queen, the people, not the government. Nowhere on that oath does it say they will and should serve the government. It also says that they will uphold the fundamental human rights of every person, and they will prevent all offences against people and property to the best of their ability, without fear or favour, without interference, and independent of government. That's very important, that you speak to a police constable and politely and respectfully ask to see their warrant card, and it should say police constable on there. When the Queen came to power in June of 1953, at her coronation, she too swore an oath. She swore an oath, and she agreed to maintain the laws and the laws of God. And she agreed to protect the Commonwealth and respect the Church. She agreed that in her coronation ceremony back in June of 1953. To maintain the laws of God and to protect the Church and the laws of the Church. Nowhere in there does she say that she will fully support the government. If the government are doing wrong and they're breaking the law, she will not support that. And the government are answerable to the Queen. And the police serve the Queen and the people. So why is that important? We all have inalienable rights. We are born with these rights. We are given to them the day that we first take air. What are these rights that we are given when we are born? They're not given to us by the Queen. They're not given to us by the police or by the government. They're given to us by God Almighty. Whether you believe in him or whether you don't, or her, God could be a woman, or a being, whatever you believe, whatever your religious beliefs or your faith, these rights are given to you as soon as you are born, and they cannot be taken away by anyone. These rights are a right to life, to freedom, and to the pursuit of happiness. The right to contract or not contract, and please forgive me, I am reading. This isn't all coming from memory. So I do keep looking down because I'm reading from my notes here. You have a right to earn a living for wages. That right is being taken away, and that's illegal. They can't do it. You are born with that right to go out and earn a living and put food on the table for you and your family. And nobody can stop you from doing that. What they are doing, the government and the police, is wrong, it's unlawful, it's your inalienable right, and they cannot take it away. You have the right to travel. They're now taking that away, or trying to, or implying that they can. Privacy and confidentiality. All these QR apps, QR codes, passports for health, wanting to know your details when you walk into a shop and put your phone number, goes against your inalienable rights. Wrong. Unlawful. Can't do it. It's not private and it's not confidential. To self-defense, to protect you from harm, loss or deceit. You have that right the day you are born. You also have that right in law to protect yourself from harm, from injury, from loss or from deceit. You also have a right to remain silent. You do not need to speak. Nobody anywhere can force you to speak. And despite what people think, if the police talk to you, you can stand there and say nothing. Nothing they can do. Equality in law. So everybody's treated the same in law. Doesn't matter who you are, what your status, colour, creed, religious beliefs, gender, age, disability, rich or poor, government or non-government, police officer or civilian. We are all equal. Peaceful association, including protest. We have a right to protest, folks. They can't take that away from us. But they're trying to, but they can't. We were born with these rights. To practice our religious beliefs and our religion, independently or as a group. Did you see what happened in the church in South East London over Easter weekend by 2 police officers? That was horrific. That was awful. That should never have happened. And those 2 police officers should be reprimanded. Those people were doing nothing wrong except using their inalienable rights to pray to their God as they see fit. Shame on those police for doing that. That was really disgusting. That made me very angry. And a lot of people very angry, and rightly so. You have a right to security from tyranny and war. We're currently at war, whether we like it or not. And the tyranny is our own government. So our rights are being breached by our own government. And we are at war. And the cause of that war is the government who are there. And they're supposed to protect us from it. To live in peace, to be left alone when you're law-abiding. If you are not causing anybody any harm, injury, loss or damage to their property, or causing a breach of the Queen's peace, you are not breaking the law, and they have to leave you alone. This is very important. You have total bodily integrity without exception. Nobody can force you to do anything to your body that you don't want them to do. No coercion, no blackmail, no threats of violence, no threats of a fine or imprisonment, no forced quarantine. If you don't want to do it to your body, medication, food, whatever you want, that is your choice and nobody else's. And these rights are very important because they're yours and yours alone, and nobody can take them away from you. You're born with them. A police constable's job is to protect you from harm, injury, loss or damage to your property, and to maintain the Queen's peace, as I've already said. Not to issue fines for a corporation, which is the British government. This is illegal, it's unlawful. It's not their job. A jury decide if you are innocent or if you are guilty. A jury, 12 good men and women, your peers, your equals in society. And if they decide you are guilty, the punishment will be given out by the adjudicator, who we call a judge. The police can't threaten you with a £200 fine. They can't issue a £200 fine. They are, but they shouldn't, and it's wrong, immoral, unlawful and illegal. They are acting on behalf of the government, which they should not do because they are impartial, independent, because they swore their oath to the Queen and the people, not to Her Majesty's government. Her Majesty's government. If you go into the Parliamentary Library on the internet, it's publicly available information, type in 9024 Parliamentary Library. Open this document. It's the powers that the police have or don't have in relation to the coronavirus legislation. If you scroll down to section 3.5, it tells the police, it tells the government in writing, there are no powers to stop people and ask them to account for their movements, especially under the COVID Act. That power has never been there, never been given, and they should not be doing it. If you're in your vehicle, walking, on a bus, on a train, going about your business lawfully, and they stop and ask you to account for what you're doing and where you're going, they can't. They don't have that power to do it. And remind them that they don't have that power, and show them this document that they don't have that power. They are abusing their authority. Another very important part of this legislation and in law is you have a right to remain silent. That's your inalienable right. It's also in law, written in law of the land, and it's also part of this legislation. A recent court case at Cardiff Crown Court, Neil versus the DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions, February 2021. The court ruled in favour of Neil. There is no statutory obligation under the COVID Act for you to give your name and address to the police. So to have to give it or to be forced to give it is wrong and illegal. That power does not exist, and it never existed. And that is a stated case, and it's recent. You don't have to talk. You don't have to give your name and address. Stated case and law. The COVID Act does not supersede the human rights, your human rights. This is very important too, because when the constables swore that oath, they swore to uphold fundamental human rights, yours and mine, and every other citizen in the United Kingdom. And that oath was sworn to the Queen, and that Queen swore to abide by the law. And our human rights cannot be taken away under this legislation. So Article 11 of the Human Rights Act, freedom of peaceful assembly and association including protest, is a given under this Act, just as it is under the inalienable rights that we were born with. So they can't take it away. The travel restrictions that are being imposed. If you look inside the first page of your passport, it says the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen, says that we can travel. And it says, and I quote, all these whom it may concern, to allow the bearer to pass freely without let or hindrance, and to afford the bearer such assistance and protection as may be necessary. The Queen is saying that we can travel freely and nobody can stop us. The same Queen who swore to uphold the law of the land by the police officers who swore an oath and allegiance to the Queen and to protect our fundamental human rights. There's nothing in there that talks about the government. Nothing. So they have no right and no power. Our passports say that we can. Our passports are still valid. Nobody's turned around and said, your passport is no longer valid. Still a legal document. Still gives us the permission from the Queen to travel. The Queen hasn't written to me and said, Mark Sexton, you can't travel, sign this document in wet ink. I haven't signed to agree not to travel in wet ink and sent it back to her. This is a request from Boris and the government. You don't have to accept it. As a citizen, we all have the power to arrest anyone, any person, committing or has just committed an indictable offence. Indictable means serious. Section 24A of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984 gives us this power. We can do, it's called a citizen's arrest, if there is no police present. You can use reasonable force in law, and you must tell them why they are under arrest. Obviously, don't be arresting people for dropping litter. It has to be serious: assault, burglary, serious crime, murder, attempted murder. I'm talking serious offences. So, the police are not above the law. They enforce the law and they abide by the law, the same laws that we abide by. So if they try to arrest you for refusing to talk, refusing your name and address, refusing to answer where you're going, and they threaten to arrest you or issue you with a £200 fine, or lay hands on you and threaten to falsely imprison you, this is an unlawful act. It's against the law. They're committing an offence. It's actually a crime in law. And they are also in breach of their oath. They are then committing an offence called misconduct in public office. You've probably heard of this before, a lot, quite recently. This is a serious offence with a penalty maximum of life in prison. That's how serious this offence is. The offence is a public officer acting as such willfully neglects to perform their duty and or willfully misconducts themselves to such a degree as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust in the office holder, without reasonable excuse or justification. Following unlawful orders is not a reasonable excuse or justification. Explain this to the constables. If they continue, they are breaking the law. Therefore, they're committing an offence, a criminal offence, and you as a citizen have the power to arrest these people. If there are 2 police officers present, ask the other police officer, please arrest this police officer who's now breaking the law and committing an offence of misconduct in public office. They are committing an indictable offence. If that other police officer refuses to make that arrest, they too are committing this offence, because they are willfully failing to perform their duty. And that's very important. And I don't expect everybody to go out there this week and start laying hands on police officers and arresting them and throwing them to the floor. But knowledge is power. And this knowledge is very important, because it's your power as a member of the public. The police are not above the law, but they are breaking the law. The government are there by consent. We, all of you and me, give them that consent. It's a gentleman's agreement, a contract that we give with conditions. Those conditions are the same as the ones that we give to the police. We give them the consent to police with conditions. What are those conditions? We don't cause any harm